Chapter 401, The Female Dark Knight. The food in the shop is indeed delicious, but the quantity is limited. Looking at the frustrated Xuanhuan and his guards, Jiang Ziyu explained quietly with a guilty expression, "The shop doesn't give anyone extra food. It's more than delicious." Xuanhuan commented with chopsticks in his hand. "A sip of coke refreshed my mind. A mouthful of instant noodles purified my spiritual essence. One bite of the sausage energized my body. And the spicy sticks. There's more." Zhenyan looked at the milk tea in his hand, feeling stunned. "After one sip of this, I feel like the red flame energy in my body is much purer than before." Zhu Ming, the other guard, held the small cup of milk tea in his huge, fan-sized hand and said in wonder, "There's more. The chili hell scroll that I cultivate has a negative side effect on my body, and I have to take spiritual herbs to help me resist this effect but couldn't remove the root cause. However, with one sip of this milk tea, the chilly energy in my body merged with this warm current. Now I feel none of the effect even if I don't suppress it intentionally." "What?" Zhenyan almost stood up in shock. "The chili hell scroll is very powerful, but its side effect is a big problem that even His Majesty can solve. However, a cup of milk tea solved this problem. How can the deserted sea realm have such good stuff?" Remembering the shop owner's great strength, he sat back down before his bud left the couch. Xuanhuan stared at Mr. Fang with a serious expression. "Sir, can't you make an exception? I can pay more for another bowl of instant noodles." Mr. Fang was unmoved while the people around them looked like they had anticipated this answer. "Name your price," Xuanhuan said with a frown. Seeing that Mr. Fang was still unmoved, Xuanhuan walked to Jiang Ziyu and asked in a low voice, "Little sister, how can the shop owner do business like this? How come he refuses to sell more food? You're close to him. Can't you ask him to sell one more bowl to me?" "What are you talking about?" Jiang Ziyu said sulkily, "Even I can only have one bowl." "What?" It was a piece of painful news. However, Xuanhuan asked in a deep voice, "What's the background of the shop owner? Didn't they mention a senior? Are they bluffing?" "They are, right?" Zhenyan asked, "Could it be that there are seniors in this shop?" "Of course, we do." At this topic, Jiang Ziyu got excited. "For example, the heavenly sword spirit that the shop owner just used comes from Senior No Name. The sword control technique comes from Senior Liquor Sword Immortal. Senior Nailin Sword 23 comes from the Old Sword Saint, and it can suppress space with one sword technique, trapping everyone inside." Ugh, they felt goosebumps all over their bodies. Xuanhuan said in disbelief, "Can it really suppress space?" "Of course." Jiang Ziyu snorted smugly, "Wherever the sword spirit of Sword 23 goes, nothing but the mind can move. People can only wait there to be butchered." Then, she showed them 2 moves from Saint spiritual sword techniques. They exchanged a look. Could it be that such techniques really exist? After all, most of the cultivators could only create spatial arrays with the law of space. The more powerful people could build teleportation arrays, and the spatial techniques that could be used in battle were all extremely powerful. Xuanhuan was surprised that someone in this place could use the law of space in battle, and this guy was even a warrior. "Humph. It's not surprising for an ultimate master to suppress space," Xuanhuan said with a snort, "but I'm surprised that there are such people in this place." "It's our fault that we didn't pay a visit to the seniors when we arrived," Xuanhuan said. "Can you introduce us to them?" Half an hour later. "You mean there are more powerful figures?" Xuanhuan exclaimed. "The master named Dante can even control time?" They all stood up, having never felt so shocked before. "Yeah." Jiang Ziyu was smug. "I'm playing Devil May Cry 3 too. Uncle Dante is so dashing." Ugh, they looked at each other, and then Xuanhuan asked, "Can we meet this Senior Dante?" 3 hours later, the 3 people finally got online after waiting in line for so long. "I didn't know people must wait in line to see Senior Dante." Under Jiang Ziyu's guidance, they began the cheerful journey in Devil May Cry 3. "Hey, ha, yeah." On the screens, the 3 of them swung the big swords wildly. No, it's not fun to fight this way." Then, Jiang Ziyu showed them a fancy combo. A while later, "Humph, I've finally reached that demonic horse Jian too." Controlling Dante, Jiang Ziyu was quite smug, and she said while showing off, "After this stage, I, too, can understand the law of time." "We can do this?" Xuanhuan and his guards looked at each other. "By the way, Shu Mountain is very good too. I'll show it to you later." With great pride, Jiang Ziyu recommended the good stuff to them one by one as if she were showing the collections of her family. The three men were at a loss for words. What on earth had happened to the deserted sea realm? Have we fallen behind, or has the world changed too fast? Meanwhile, in the Nanhua faction, the forbidden place in the back mountain of Nanhua faction was no longer there. After the reconstruction of the Nanhua faction, a simple and quiet cottage appeared at the peak of the back mountain of the faction. Standing in the courtyard, Shui Jian held her breath, and her pale face turned red. Devil trigger! With a shout, a big surge of black essence rushed out of her body, and tiny, dense scales grew on her crystal-like arms and neck. Even her pupils turned red. Her smooth forehead slightly bulged while two black horns stuck out. A weird smile appeared on her face. Then, her expression changed, and a ton of black essence flowed back into her body like a whale sucking in water. Pale-faced, she exhaled deeply and murmured, "This force is still difficult to control. After playing Devil May Cry for so long, I still can't fully master it. It seems like I need to play it some more." Meanwhile, in Half City, the fancy estate to the east of Heaven Hiding Pavilion was the residence of a demonic woman. No one dared to venture inside to disturb her. However, creepy laughter was always floating out of the mansion lately. "Ha-ha-ha, it's amazing that this shop has such a method to control the weird force in my body." A charming voice came from the depth of the estate. It was a snow-white building as grand as a palace. Inside the grand hall of the mansion that was luxuriously decorated. I'm no longer pretty in this form. I'd better change back." A huge green tail slowly shrank, and a human figure with beautiful curves gradually appeared in the grand hall. A pair of white, jade-like feet were revealed under the long green dress. While the fangs retracted into her mouth, her green eyes looked surprised. Now she looked completely like a human. Humph! Soon, two fangs showed themselves again, and her face returned to chilliness. "Tomorrow, I'll learn the Devil Trigger combo from the shop owner. Soon, I will become the #1 Dark Knight in this world." She yawned lazily and remembered that she must learn Orochi Divine Light. "I feel like I don't have enough time to learn all this stuff." Chapter 402, Entering the World Stage. After leading her big brother and his two guards into the game and getting them on the path of addiction, Jiang Ziyu was quite happy. While she looked at Xuanhuan, who was engrossed in the game, she hummed while she skipped around, "Don't need to go to school. Don't need to go to school." She exclaimed when she skipped past Mr. Fang. "Boss, why did you grab my collar?" She looked back and glared at Mr. Fang in anger. "Did I say that you don't have to go to school?" Mr. Fang said solemnly. "Ugh?" Jiang Ziyu gaped and looked at Fang Qi in surprise. "What do you mean by ugh?" Sitting on the couch, Mr. Fang looked serious, which was quite rare. "I'm doing fine in the shop. Why should I go to school?" Jiang Ziyu snorted and said, "What's so good about going to school? I can learn more here." "Of course, you can learn more in this shop than in school," Mr. Fang said. "So you plan to watch the shop for me all your life? If you do, you must stay here while I go out and have fun," Mr. Fang said. "No." Jiang Ziyu disagreed immediately while shouting, "I want to go out and play too." She got suspicious. After making several turns around Mr. Fang, she said in pleasant surprise, "Boss, do you plan to go out for fun?" "I want to go too." Although she wouldn't be able to eat the delicious snacks while being out to play, it was a bit boring sometimes to sit at the counter each day playing games and act as a cashier. Sometimes, she indeed wanted to go out and check around. However, what does it to do with going to school? Jiang Ziyu said, "The Heavenly Academy is so far away. I might not be able to come back if I go there." It was difficult to make the journey back. She would have to cover the distance from the Heavenly Academy to the border, where she had to be teleported to the deserted sea realm through a special teleportation array, after which she must journey across the vast ocean to get to Dajin. One trip from the Heavenly Academy to Dajin would be tough. It would be fine if she just went back home. However, if she went to school, she would have to do all kinds of boring and tedious homework. It was hard to say when she would get a chance to come back here. "Please, I don't want to go." With a pout, the little girl grabbed Mr. Fang's hand and begged and acted cute. Mr. Fang was unmoved. "When I was your age, I was a tri-merit student each year." TL note: in China, the tri-merit student honor system tries to incentivize the students to obtain virtues of good morals, hard study, and sporting excellence. Humph! What tri-merit student? You are still an elementary school student. Jiang Ziyu ran to Xuanhuan's side after stomping her foot. Xuanhuan, who was gaming, saw Jiang Ziyu's sulky face and said angrily, Little sister, did anyone bully you? Don't worry. I'll teach them a lesson for you. It's the damn, despicable boss. Jiang Ziyu yelled, stomping her foot. Your boss Xuanhuan was puzzled. Weren't you two on the same boat just a moment ago, and you even ditched me? Your big brother? The boss told me to go to school. Sobbed Jiang Ziyu. Felt like crying. She had finally stopped her big brother from taking her home and making her to go to school, but now her boss betrayed her. It was infuriation. Hey hiya. Xuanhuan was pleased. Despite my admiration for Brother Fang's deep cultivation strength, powerful spiritual spells, and combat techniques, I thought he was unreasonable. But now, I know that I misunderstood him. Mr. Fang is a hero with a generous mind and great determination. He quickly sang high praises of Fang Qi. Then, he said, I've just tried this Devil May Cry 3, and it's indeed good. However, you're still young, and there are many things that you can't learn from the games, such as how to deal with people in society and life experiences. Besides, the elders and the Heavenly Academy will teach you according to your talent and interest and show you a system of detailed knowledge of everything. Tell me, little sister, how much of the blue flame of time in Devil May Cry 3 can you understand? Jiang Ziyu scratched her head in embarrassment. It's fuzzy. I can use it in the game but can understand nothing about it once I'm out of the game. That's what I mean, Xuanhuan said seriously. You must start from the beginning. It's not easy to understand a high-level law of nature. Besides, the cultivation method of our Jiang family is the result of hard efforts of many generations, and it's the most fitting cultivation method for our bloodline. It is the origin of our Jiang family, and we can't just dump it just because. Jiang Ziyu seemed to have vaguely understood the reasons, but she just refused to go to school. She was on the verge of throwing a tantrum. At this moment, she smelled the fragrance of spicy sticks. Mr. Fang handed her a box of spicy sticks and said, eat some spicy sticks to calm yourself down. Humph. She averted her small face away from him. Mr. Fang began eating with loud noises. Wow! The spicy fragrance, the special flavor of the gluten and the crispness of the sesame seeds. It's so tasty. A foodie, Jiang Ziyu couldn't bear it anymore. I want to eat. I want to eat. She wanted to grab the box of spicy sticks from Mr. Fang and eat everything herself. But while eating spicy sticks, she said with misery, if I go to school, I can't eat such tasty spicy sticks anymore. I've decided, Mr. Fang said with great passion, my internet cafe will go out of the deserted sea realm and enter the world stage. Jiang Ziyu exclaimed in astonishment, boss, what did you say? I said that I plan to open internet cafes outside of the deserted sea realm and enter the world stage. Mr. Fang declared. Ah! Jiang Ziyu exclaimed, does it mean that I can play games and eat snacks after school? Work hard on your sword control technique. Mr. Fang said, I think it can be done. Okay. Jiang Ziyu finally relented. Then, I'll go to school reluctantly. Xuanhuan wiped the sweat off his forehead in relief. Also, he silently gave Mr. Fang a thumbs up. Mr. Fang finally coaxed the girl to agree to go to school. At the same time, after hearing Mr. Fang's declaration, he immediately asked, Sir, you have a plan to open a branch? Of course. If there was no net, how could it be called the internet? Mr. Fang began to imagine the scenario in which all the places in the world were connected by internet. By that time, the big online games could be really called online games. From the looks of it now, he still had a long way to go. Boss, when should we go out and open the branch? Obviously, Jiang Ziyu couldn't wait to begin. Mr. Fang asked, when will you go to that kindergarten? Kindergarten? Jiang Ziyu asked, what is that? I'm going to the Heavenly Academy. Ugh, Heavenly Kindergarten? Mr. Fang scratched his head. Jiang Ziyu was at a loss for words. In the spring of next year, Xuanhuan said, the Heavenly Academy will start its new school year in the spring of next year. Then, I'll make some preparations and go there before spring. Chapter 403, The Final Battle. After the schedule of Jiang Ziyu's journey to the Heavenly Academy was determined, Xuanhuan, who had nothing else to do, began playing games in the Origins Internet Cafe and became a regular customer of Mr. Fang's shop. At Jiang Ziyu's recommendation, he mainly played Devil May Cry 3 and watched movies and TV series such as Shu Mountain and Jade Dynasty. In the meantime, from now on, a tall man and his two guards could be seen waiting outside the internet cafe before the shop was open each morning. Although Half City, which was far away, was full of cultivators, there were many players of Devil May Cry 3. In addition, there were people putting lots of time and energy into the game since they wanted to become Dark Knights. Besides playing Devil May Cry, Ningbai also bought an electric guitar in her Xuanhuan. It was a copy of Dante's electric guitar. She sent a message to Mr. Fang on QQ, "Sir, can you recommend to me some good songs that can be played on the guitar? I want something more thrilling." She added while also posting a screenshot in which a tall, brunette, fair-skinned beauty with green eyes wore a black long dress and was holding an electric guitar while canine teeth lightly pointed out of her mouth. She did have the feel of a guitarist in a band. Mr. Fang touched his forehead and was at a loss for words. At this moment, Ningbai adjusted her electric guitar in Xuanhuan and sang with self-complacency, "Jung Sing Hung He Gua Ga Dik Sun Hu. Joy Tao Sang Mang Lui, Fong Fat Didam He Hu." TL Note, Translation: the clock bell chimes the signal to go home. In his life, there seems to carry a small sigh of regret. The song was nice to the ears when her elegant and aloof voice mingled with the sounds of the top-quality electric guitar made by the system. On the other side, Xuanhuan was alone in her courtyard. She had bought the technique from the Wu Taoist Alliance and made 2 customized handguns, one black and one white. They had exquisite patterns on them, and they almost exactly looked like Dante's 2 handguns. On her back, she carried a meticulously made big sword that was instilled with magical properties. On one side of the crossguard was a demon face, and on the other side was a human face, which was the same as the style of Dante's sword. The body of the sword was made with deep ocean chili iron and created by the alliance of various factions using mimic techniques. The craftsmanship was reliable and trustworthy. All kinds of spiritual artifact targets were randomly placed around her. Then, she copied Dante's moves and fired both guns. Crack, crack. A wave of intense gunshots rose. Shooting backward and forward at the same time. Then, she threw up a spiritual artifact target with her sword. She condensed a spiritual essence in her body, and fierce blue flames appeared at the muzzles. Spiritual essence bullets. Crack, crack. She fired wildly. Then, she leaped up and turned with her head facing the ground. While she turned, she fired repeatedly, and the bullets engulfed by pale blue light flew around as if a goddess were scattering flower petals. It was a beautiful sight, as if many flowers were blooming and dancing in mid-air. After withdrawing the guns, she stood still, looked dashing and cool. Around her, the ground was covered by many bullet holes, the doors were shattered, and the plants were ruined. It was a dilapidated sight. Then, she picked up the spiritual artifact targets from the ground. They were as smooth as new. She missed them all. Her clumsy marksmanship had reached a new height. Her face turned dark. Then, she quickly glanced around and felt relieved that no one saw her. She heaved a sigh of relief. "Senior sister, senior sister." At this moment, a voice came. Her face turned dark. Why must she come here at this moment? Crack, crack. Immediately, she shot each of the spiritual artifact targets at close range. When the Zichi spiritual master came into the courtyard, she saw Xuanhuan, who was in her white robe holding guns which still had smoke floating out of the muzzles. "Senior sister, you're practicing your shooting skills?" Zichi spiritual master looked around and saw that each spiritual artifact target had a bullet hole in the center. She quickly praised, "Excellent aim." With the aura of a master living beyond the mortal world, Xuanhuan casually asked, "Junior sister, what brought you here?" "Senior sister, have you forgotten that the shop owner will broadcast the last bit of Devil May Cry 3 this afternoon? He will be passing all stages." "Really?" She immediately put things her away and got prepared. "Let's go then." Each story would come to its end. Devil May Cry brought the players fascinating battles and those fancy, stunning moves that could be used at lightning speed. In the game, Fang Qi controlled Dante to defeat powerful bosses one by one. Following the steps of Dante and Virgil, Fang Qi traveled from the human world to the demon world. The main character had noble and evil demon blood in his body. He was showy, elegant, and open-minded while remaining humane and kind. All these qualities made a deep impression in the players' minds. To pursue his father's power, Virgil even broke the seal that his father had used to lock the demons and thus woke up the demons from deep slumber and opened the dimensional crack between the demon world and the human world. Inside the portal to the demon world, horrifying demonic energy swept around in chaos. The twins of the legendary Dark Knight chose different paths of life. One inherited their father's strength while the other inherited their parents' faith. Whenever the world lost its balance, and darkness threatened to envelop everything, A proud soul would always stand tall and go against the current of destruction even if the soul itself was born from darkness. If the previous battles were only fights between brothers, this one was battle to the death. All the players of Devil May Cry came early and took good seats in front of the big screens. Even though they were still far from clearing all stages, they didn't mind watching the stage clearing video first. In fact, while they played the game, many players focused their attention on fierce battles and the maniac study of the techniques, neglecting the plot. However, when they watched Mr. Fang play it, they could calmly experience the story. This was the last battle between the brothers. At this last stage, Virgil's strength had grown so high that it could only be described as horrifying. When he drew his katana, no, it couldn't be called as drawing katana. No one saw him unsheath it. However, a horrifying saber light appeared before Mr. Fang's Dante as if it had just crossed space and time. What's this saber technique? How can he do this? Many people in the audience exclaimed in astonishment. Dimension Slash. Virgil started the battle with such a horrifying move, and all the people in the audience felt a great pressure. Different from Dante, Virgil was a dark knight, and he thought that using guns was an insult to him. He never used guns and only believed in using his sword. However, it didn't mean that he couldn't attack from a distance. Dimension Slash was one of his range attack methods. Then, the audience saw something even more unbelievable. The moment that Mr. Fang blocked the Dimension Slash, Virgil waved his hand, and the Yamato in his hand flew out like a beam of blue light. Sword control technique? No, we should call it saber control technique. This guy is so awesome. Chapter 404, the beginning of the special chapter. Virgil's downfall. Mr. Fang's strength was more than enough to deal with the small demons and previous bosses and even show off some moves. However, he found that it was difficult to deal with Virgil even though he had leveled up most of Dante's moves and skills to a high level. Mr. Fang exhaled with some relief since he had worked hard in order to clear the game. Fortunately, after the task of opening another branch shop started, the system had given him 3 days access to the game cultivation room. Recently, after he did the live stream, he would go in the game cultivation room and fight with Dante for a long time. As a result, he could better master some of Dante's moves and skills and use them with more proficiency. What is a battle? For many people, battles only meant killing, a way to show one's strength, or protection. However, in Devil May Cry, battles were more meaningful than that. It was probably from this era on that the art of combat was presented before people. The horrifying high speed left many ghost-like shadows on the screen. Like a ghost, Virgil moved as fast as his sword. When he sheathed Yamato and held the force edge with one hand, he turned into a blurry shadow and pierced through Dante like a flash. Under Mr. Fang's control, Dante shifted and dashed away. In the blink of an eye, he moved to another spot. Meanwhile, the spot that he was standing on before was attacked by many saber energies. Now, everyone realized that Virgil had attacked many times when he passed by Dante. The shop owner is so calm. He would have been cut into pieces if he had been 1 second slower. The strike was so fast that the audience only knew what had happened in that instant just now. After he missed the target, Virgil vanished after a blue light flashed. Inside the portal leading to the demon world, endless demon energy surged up, and horrifying lightning bolts flashed in the crack in space. In the next moment, a flash of saber light hacked down from the sky. Then, with a crisp collision of weapons, Virgil vanished again. Then came the second strike, the third. Like thunderbolts, strikes came one after another from impossible angles. The moment that each of the struck fell, he vanished again and again. The place was filled with dark demon energy, and the audience in front of the big screens saw only lightning-like saber energies hacking down. They couldn't see any figures on the screens. Look at the shop owner! In exclamation, Fang Qi controlled Dante to pass through the lightning bolts casually as if he were wandering around. Whenever a saber light flashed, a sword light would appear as well. While the sword light and saber light collided and created many sparks, Dante remained intact. Oh my goodness! Even Dante himself can fight better than this. When did this kid achieve such proficiency with the Dark Knight's combat skills? Even Nailan Hongwu was dazed. Excellent! Lights flashed in Ningbai's eyes, proud that she could use this fancy combat style in the future. At this moment, Virgil clearly changed his combat style after his last strike. When their weapons collided, a layer of blue sword light lit up around Virgil. Summon sword! When the circular sword array was launched, more than 10 blue sword energies rotated around Virgil at a great speed. and their sharp blade threatened to shatter everything around them into pieces. The audience was unprepared for the sudden change. Meanwhile, Mr. Fang displayed and put up a fist technique pose. He changed to a fist technique? What is this? Obviously, this was a fist technique that needed time to concentrate energy. He would be hit by his opponent's summoned sword before he could launch his fist technique. Is it a mistake? All the people looked baffled. Beowulf, a set of gauntlets, was transformed from a powerful demon which was a foe of Dark Knight Sparta. It contained horrifying strength. Before it was launched, the fist technique pose already condensed a layer of extremely powerful demonic energy before Dante. Tink, 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 tink. It wasn't a mistake. Absolutely not a mistake. What do you mean? The new players of Devil May Cry 3 were even more baffled. How come the shop owner received no damage? These fist techniques are heavy moves which gather so much power that they can block attacks in an area. People like Nail and Hongwen Song King Feng who were familiar with this game explained. However, these moves are slow to use, which means that the shop owner blocked the attacks through prediction. Mr. Fang's fist technique was not fast and seemed like he wasn't trying to hit Virgil. However, it forced Virgil to retreat, and he took this opportunity to jump out of the battlefield with the help from the momentum of the fist technique. Virgil looked unsurprised. With a flash of the summoned sword, the sword energies shot out from the circular sword array and formed another sword array. Instead of rotating around Virgil, this new sword array surrounded Fang's Dante. Virgil can even use sword arrays? However, Mr. Fang instantly landed and kicked toward Virgil from mid-air as if he teleported himself. Look, watch Mr. Fang. Mr. Fang controlled Dante to kick and step in mid-air many times like a demonic god that could fly. The flame and tornado blades slashed out many ice and flame shadows. Even though Dante couldn't fly, he moved in the air like a nimble swallow. In the blink of an eye, Virgil was struck more than 10 times, and the circular sword array instantly disintegrated. Of course, it wasn't possible to kill Virgil, who had a demon physique, with only about 10 strikes. Suddenly, a shielding layer condensed from blue demonic energy appeared around him, and it blocked Dante's strike like a tough, golden barrier. Virgil suddenly vanished, and no one knew where he was. However, a dimension/storm swept all over the space. The dimension/ which could leap through space instantly filled the whole portal to the demon world. The audience saw that the saber light of the dimension/ filled the whole screen. Except the collisions of the sword and the saber, it was hard to see the two figures in the battle. Virgil's speed was so fast that it was horrifying to watch his moves. Tink, tink, tink. With a series of metal colliding noises, Mr. Fang controlled Dante to calmly block the attacks. While he blocked, he even mocked Virgil. The audience watched Dante mock Virgil on the big screen. At this moment, you are still mocking your big brother? Royal Guard? Perfect block? What are these damn godlike plays? They had never imagined that one could look so awesome in a game. Under Mr. Fang's control, and since Dante's strength grew more powerful, Virgil started to look weak and at a disadvantage. While more and more wounds appeared on Virgil's body, the portal connecting the demon world and the human world was about to close. The battle finally came to an end. Covered in wounds, Virgil looked lonely, proud, and sad like a wounded wolf king. Refusing his brother's hand, he jumped from the cliff at the end of the portal that led to the demon world, falling into the abyss. All his schemes and ambitions fell into the bottomless abyss in the demon world with him. He left behind the force edge that his father had used to seal the demon world. Virgil spent all his life pursuing strength, but he left the object of his lifelong pursuit to Dante at the end. Virgil had witnessed his mother's death while he was small and weak, which was why he had craved for great strength all his life. However, it was enough for one of the twins to inherit the strength. This unorthodox hero who was hungry for strength all his life had hidden his love for his twin brother deep in his heart, and it was only slightly revealed at this moment. After this battle, Dante's shop finally got its name, Devil May Cry. Beep. Congratulations for passing Devil May Cry 3. You unlocked the character, Virgil. The special chapter Virgil's Downfall needs 25 crystals to activate. Right. After the players cleared the stage, they could choose to play the game from Virgil's perspective. At the beginning, the audience hadn't understood the meaning of this announcement. When they did, they went into a cheer. This meant that they could learn Virgil's dimension/ summon sword, and other techniques. The Virgil's Downfall told the story about his experience after he fell into the demon world. After all, demons didn't die so easily. In this story, he encountered his father's foe. As the recovered emperor of the demon world and a proud demon, he battled to the death with his broken body. Chapter 405, The New Year Party. The ending was sad, but it was what they had expected. Compared to Dante, who was more like a human, Virgil was a cold and proud demon, and the demon world was his home. It was not only a story about the hero. It was also Virgil's elegy. Compared with Xuanhuan, this ending didn't show any horrifying power such as old demon Xuanhuan who covered the sky. That style and power better fitted with cultivators. However, the power showed in Xuanhuan belonged to cultivators. For most warriors, the battle styles showed in Devil May Cry 3 was probably more fitting for them. The concentrated mind can pierce boulders. Yes, concentration was the key. Although they didn't have endless demonic energy to overpower their opponents, they could highly concentrate their minds and energy to deal great damage. For example, Virgil's katana could cut through the Hell Vanguard and even chop the head of Beowulf, a powerful demon boss, into 4 pieces. Under high concentration, the strikes and slashes would be endowed with great power, and as soon as it was used, the damage alone wasn't inferior to the spiritual artifacts and spells of the cultivators. Besides, this game had created its own mature combat system. For example, there was the great ability of dodging and teleportation under the trickster style and the fancy moves under the sword master style and gunslinger style. The ranged attacks included things such as guns and summon swords, and the Royal Guard style offered great defense such as perfect block and golden shield, including the Quicksilver style and doppelganger style. This system was almost flawless except that it lacked flight abilities. Of course, the 2 main characters could fly when activating their demon triggers. Since the players all possessed their own flight techniques, this tiny flaw was nothing in their eyes. Then, Fang Qi tried the first scene of the Virgil chapter, and he showed off Virgil's sword arrays as well as strikes and slashes. Since they looked obviously more dashing than Dante's moves, a large group of people gathered behind him to watch. Different from the original version, the Virgil chapter of the system version had its own missions to accomplish. Since Virgil's strength was very high at the beginning of the game, the whole process would be relatively shorter. In the Virgil chapter, Virgil's battle with Dante was only the prelude, and the main missions happened after he entered the demon world. Obviously, this new chapter was warmly accepted by fans of Devil May Cry. As for the players of Devil May Cry in Half City, they preferred Virgil, who was an unorthodox hero, so they all worked hard to pass the game to unlock the Virgil chapter. Meanwhile, Mr. Fang continued to earn red orbs in the game and tried to push all of the 2 characters' techniques and skill to the max levels. 2 more characters appeared in the game cultivation room. One was Dante, who wore a red windbreaker and carried the big sword Rebellion on his back. He looked untamed and reckless. The other was blue-robed Virgil, with Yamato hanging on his belt. His eyes looked chilly. While others learned from their masters or elders and their respective factions or families, Fang Qi found that his best teachers were these statue-like game characters. In here, he fought each battle with his life. Most of the time, Mr. Fang wouldn't try to learn the ultimate techniques that were too deep for him, since those moves would consume lots of his energy, and there was no guarantee that he could cast these techniques afterwards. In addition, he would be killed hundreds if not thousands of times each day if he tried. With his current strength at the late-stage Grand Ancestral Warrior realm and the assistance of the owner brand cigarettes, Mr. Fang now could use Sword God once. When he launched Orochi Divine Light, he had borrowed strength from the godly weapon fragments. It wasn't his own strength. Since it wasn't necessary for him to learn higher-level techniques, his top priority right now was increasing his cultivation strength. He focused on practicing simple and efficient moves and increasing the efficiency of playing games. After all, he could obtain lots of cultivation strength through playing games, and it couldn't be neglected. Soon, Dante's surroundings began to change, and the scene shifted to the place before Dante's shop. They both held 2 guns. After the first gunshot, a series of rhythmic gunshots followed. Gunfire flashed on both sides, turning from orange to red. In the next moment, they began to fire bullets instilled with demonic energy. The place looked as if it had just been bombed, with huge bullet holes everywhere. When the magazines went empty, 2 sword energy slashed out swiftly. Meanwhile, due to the existence of Grand Theft Auto 5's online mode, many players paid little attention to the plot in the offline mode. However, a group of artifact masters, who knew how to enjoy life and harbored a strong interest in powerful weapons and advanced technologies, played the game to the end. Of course, for most of the players, The biggest attraction of this game was all kinds of novel things and lifestyles. When they were tired of playing other games, they would enter this game to drive around, take a drink, and enjoy the sunshine. The civilian warriors of Xuanhuan City naturally wouldn't spend money to relax in this game. However, the major forces outside Dajin paid great attention to it after they learned that Dajin had derived their winning war strategy from this game to defeat their alliance. The cultivators in Half City generally could afford this game. While the sales of Devil May Cry 3 shot up, the sales of Grand Theft Auto 5 continued to grow gradually as well. The activation number of 3,000 seemed like a big target, but after a long while, the target was almost reached. It showed that the people in this different world also like games featuring entertainment. It was hard to imagine that some people would be so lazy that they didn't even want to play the relaxing Grand Theft Auto 5, but these people did exist. Su Tianji peeled a spiritual orange that she had just picked from her orange tree. While stuffing one piece into her mouth, she clicked her mouse and began playing Plants vs. Zombies again in her room. From the looks of it, she wouldn't stop until she passed the game. Meanwhile, a large group of players gathered in Mr. Fang's arcade room. They slammed on the buttons and pushed the joysticks wildly, fighting their rivals on the screen. The fans of J Dynasty had reached the part in which the beast god invaded the middle region of the continent. On the other hand, Wind and Cloud was coming to an end. It was late winter, and New Year's was around the corner. Mr. Fang was making plans for his vacation that could be covered in the business trip of opening a new shop next year when the system beeped, signaling that there was a new message for him. New task, New Year party. Task description: New Year is coming. Please hold a New Year party in the Internet Cafe. Task content: the activities can be dancing, singing, a cosplay contest, or other activities that the host chooses. Task venue: the two shops and Xuanhuan. Task props: New Year gift boxes big N. New Year gift boxes small n. Task reward: Super Gift Box. Mr. Fang, what on earth is this? Chapter 406, The Musical Festival and the King of Fighters Competition. Mr. Fang looked at the task in embarrassment. Can we talk about it? This is an internet cafe after all. Which internet cafe holds New Year parties? Although this was another world, people also had the concept of years. They derived 12 months for each year according to the movements of the sun, the moon, and other stars. Therefore, there was the concept of a new year as well. Since Mr. Fang discovered that Half City and Xuanhuan City were in the same time zone, he didn't have to worry about hosting several New Year parties. The other issue was shop upgrades. A prompt appeared on the system interface. The income of crystals has provided enough energy for another shop upgrade. You can upgrade them again. When The Legend of Mare 2 went online, the computers in each of the two shops increased to around 2,000 inches a short period, which was obviously a big strain on the energy. But a long while had passed since the last upgrade. There were 2,000 computers in Half City shop, and Xuanhuan City shop had over 2,000 computers if one were to add the computers in the ordinary player zone and guild zone. Also, the popularity of the games had went from great to splendid. Now, the two shops were packed from day to night, so they made a lot of crystals. With thousands of computers, even though it only cost 2 crystals for each hour per person, the income for 1 hour was almost 10,000 crystals, not including the sales of other stuff, including the activations of moves, TV series, and all kinds of games as well as the sales of snacks. The total revenue had amounted to tens of millions of crystals in the last few months. Of course, this was the amount that the system earned. However, Mr. Fang's share had made him a millionaire already. For ordinary civilians, this might be an astronomical number, but for the warriors and cultivators who must spend many crystals to cultivate each month, this income was quite normal. Anyway, since Mr. Fang was now rich, he had been considering buying a high-end shopfront. While he received the task of upgrading the shops, he also got some new privileges. For example, he got one more percentage in profit sharing and unlocked a mode in which he could upgrade portions of the shops according to his own choices. In this mode, the shop owner could plan the zones and the style of each zone by himself. At a closer look, Mr. Fang found that he could also unlock some advanced options such as utilizing the expanded shop space to use space folding abilities. Another privilege that he got was that he could alter the computer time. He could alter it up to 2 hours. Another thing he had to consider was the hiring of employees after the expansion of the shop space. One employee was not enough for each shop. Previously, Mr. Fang had obtained the privilege of managing 2 employees, deciding the employees' work hours, giving out special employee cards which contained free online time for each month. The last upgrade was the activation of the digitized transferring between spiritual messages and network nodes in the shops. These services were only available to the membership customers. After the activation, the customers with membership cards could access the shop's internet to chat on QQ and watch the live stream on the big screen through the new communication jades, which meant that they could watch live streams and join in on the fun wherever they were. Meanwhile, the new communication jade development project that Mr. Fang had a share in achieved a new result. Due to the many functions, the new communication jade used to have a big size. After some improvements, its looks improved into that of a jade amulet in the shape of a smartphone. The low-level communication jade could send pictures and text messages and conduct two-way calls. The high-level communication jade, like the one that Mr. Fang was holding, was a piece of white jade covered in dense engravings. This communication jade is a new product of our alliance. Li Heron handed Mr. Fang this communication jade with pride. It can do all the things such as the shadow condensing spell, shadow recall spell, and sending messages and voice messages from hundreds of kilometers away. It can almost do anything. Shadow condensing spell was just the name for taking pictures at the Wui Taoist Alliance, and the shadow recall spell meant video recording. While Li Heron introduced the functions, Mr. Fang tried it himself. After he injected some key into the jade, a two-dimensional illusion appeared in a layer of mist. It looked like the interface of a smartphone, but one must use essence or key to control the mouse-like cursor on the interface. What do you think of it? Li Heron was a bit nervous while looking at his masterpiece. In fact, these functions were originally some low-level spiritual spells. To make this new communication jade, the Wui Taoist Alliance increased their levels by force and improved their effects before engraving them into the communication jade. Since they were handmade by artifact masters, and the processes were extremely complicated, there weren't many of such communication jades around, and the one in Mr. Fang's hand was definitely a high-end product. Excellent. Awesome. Mr. Fang gave him a thumbs up. It was still early in the morning, but the two shops were full of customers, especially the members of the forces that were playing The Legend of Mare 2, who usually came here very early in the morning. Even the usually idle Su Tianji didn't lounge on the couch today. She got online first and then bought instant noodles and milk tea. However, the moment that she walked to the counter today, she was greeted with lots of new announcements. For example, there was the hiring of shop clerks and the New Year party. The New Year party included the following activities. Cosplay. It is a basic activity. The customers who dress up as the characters in the games, movies, or TV series will get 1 extra hour of computer time per day and can register for the most original contest. Xuanhuan Musical Festival. Anyone can enter this activity, and the gala will be held in Xuanhuan. Xuanhuan the King of Fighters competition. Anyone can register for this event, and it will be held in Xuanhuan. Xuanhuan. While reading the many activities on the small blackboard, Su Tianji felt dazed. It's just a celebration of the New Year. How come there are so many weird activities? After all, she usually passed the first day of each year in seclusion cultivation and had never seen such things before. Registering for any of the activities will get them 1 more hour of computer time per day. The participants who can get the top 3 places for any of the activities will each get a New Year gift box big. The higher the rankings, the higher quality the gifts will be. The participants who get into the top 10 places will each get a few New Year gift boxes small. The number of gift boxes is determined by the placement. Then, she saw another announcement. At New Year's Eve, the shop won't be closed. All the customers can continue playing online after midnight. Chapter 407, A strange person slipped in. Well, you can't even give me some rest during the New Year holiday. Mr. Fang thought to himself about the system in contempt while he explained the events to Su Tianji and other customers. The system interface showed the following lines. Host, please be ambitious and motivated. Ambitious? Am I not ambitious enough? Mr. Fang said unwillingly. I cultivated hard each day, got all S rankings in all of Dante's missions, defeated all opponents with one hand in the King of Fighters, became the best driver in Grand Theft Auto 5. I even play Virgil well despite the fact that I just began the game. Don't you know how I obtained my high cultivation strength? System, The super gift box contains luxurious New Year gifts. It's the host's choice to do the task or not. Mr. Fang instantly brightened and got energetic. When did I say that I wouldn't do it? Besides Su Tianji, the other customers who came over to buy instant noodles also noticed the new announcements. Mr. Fang glanced at the calendar and found that there were about 2 weeks for registration and preparation. Sir, what's this music festival? Su Tianji couldn't take her eyes off of this activity. Since it's related to music and held in Xuanhuan, I have traded several classic Gutsang sheet music, and I am sure that I'll get a good place in the competition. Sir, the King of Fighters competition. The King of Fighters competition. Song King Feng squeezed to the counter. I want to register for the King of Fighters competition. Nalan Mingzhu asked, can we register for all these events? Of course. Mr. Fang told them that this party was pure entertainment, and they could register for as many activities as they wished. Then, we will register for all the activities. So do we. All of them. Zhu Zixin and Shen Qingqing also walked up. We do too. Dong Qingli and Zhang Wanlu didn't want to be outdone. Register me in the King of Fighters competition. Even Nalan Hong will join the fun. And that M cosplay too. I want to participate too. Using its advantage of flying, a black cloud flew above the crowd and arrived at the counter. I want to attend it too. All the people looked at the black cloud in a daze. Sir, can pets attend this party? Who said that I'm a pet? Like a cat whose tail was stepped on, it leaped up and glanced around viciously. I'm the supreme, almighty demon lord who swept across the morning star sea realm, unrivaled. Ahia. Just you? Demon, go away. Mr. Fang looked disdainful. You're just a teleportation array. What can you cosplay as? Instantly, people crowded around the counter. Meanwhile in the half-city shop, customers were becoming enthusiastic about the party as well. People from the Nano faction sat on the couches after registration, waiting for their turns to get online. Mozian had a cup of milk tea in her hand. Who wants to attend the cosplay event? We will get 1 extra hour of game time if we attend that. Me. Yu Yan immediately answered. I've sent a message to senior sister Leon and asked her to make a disciple robe of the Green Cloud faction and a copy of the Tiania sword. From now on, call me Luzuki. I'm Luzuki. Mozian glared at her. You are elder senior sister Wenmin from Jade Dynasty. Luzuki doesn't wear black clothes like you do. Yu Yan immediately changed the subject. Oh, what's your plan, junior sister Lu? Lu Ningyan chuckled. I won't fight with you. I've chosen someone else already. While some were fighting for different characters, Song Qingfeng and the others were well prepared. Hey hiya. Song Qingfeng was holding a brown tight-fitting uniform, and the image of a sun could be seen on the back. Standing by him, Lin Xiao was wearing a dark blue vest over a white shirt with a pair of red trousers. On the back of the vest was the image of a crescent moon. With his arms bent and lifted over his head, he shouted, Tsuki wo Myru Tabio Moi Days. The initial pose before using Yori Yagami's desperation move, Kin 1211 Chikiyako Tome. Besides them, most of the other customers were also getting prepared. For cultivators outside of the deserted sea realm, the cultivators living in the deserted sea realm were backwards and had low cultivation strength. To go out of the deserted sea realm, they needed not only to cross vast oceans but to break through the heavenly forbidden zones which had existed since prehistoric times. No one in this world knew about the origins of the heavenly forbidden zones. People only knew that the ocean area east to the morning sea area realm was called the Nether Sea, and all the major factions listed it as the #1 forbidden place. The 3 saint factions called the westernmost area Taehuang Mountain, which meant extremely deserted mountain. The people of these 3 factions feared it so much that no one dared to venture inside. The northernmost place was a bone-chilling icy land. If ordinary cultivators entered it, their spiritual essence would be frozen to ice. The mountain peaks covered in white snow concealed many fierce beasts that had lived there ever since the prehistoric times. In short, it was a bitter cold place that even Divine Palace realm cultivators with extremely high cultivation strength couldn't pass. According to the legends, the only path leading to the blessed land existed in the vast ocean in the south. In the past, some cultivators came to the deserted sea realm from outside, and they said that they came from spiritual state. According to the legends, it was a vast land with tall celestial mountains and abundant spiritual essence. However, out of the cultivators who had sailed into the southern sea to look for that land, few had sent back messages. However, the secret information was only known to the forces such as the 3 saint factions, which was why very few cultivators in the deserted sea realm had the chance to communicate with the outside world. Since the teleportation ray of the three saint factions had shut down thousands of years ago, the communication to the outside world was almost completely cut off. For cultivators in the deserted sea realm, the cultivators from the outside world were mysterious and mighty with special powers. However, for Xuanhuan, the path in the southern sea was not as magical as it was told in the legends on the deserted sea realm. In their eyes, the deserted sea realm was only a wasteland separated by heavenly forbidden zones which seemed to have appeared due to nature, not worthy of their efforts to enter. To their surprise, the little princess of the Jiang family had come to this place to play. Knowing that she would return to spiritual state to go to school in the coming spring, the young girl was quite reluctant to leave. When Mr. Fang was in the shop to watch everything, she went out to buy many special local stuff, such as new communication jades, handguns, and sniper rifles. As for the new employees, the half-city shop had already solved this issue. Ruining, Fang Qi's warm-hearted neighbor, had gotten used to keeping an eye on the shop from Mr. Fang. Since she had hired someone to manage her own shop, she applied for the clerk position in the half-city shop with Zumo. There were 2 employees in the shop now. Meanwhile in Zhuhai City, in the long line of people applying for the shop clerk position, a golden-robed young man greeted Mr. Fang. Mr. Fang's face twitched, and he wondered, why did this guy who is on the blacklist sneak in here? Chapter 408, A Brand New Outlook. Guangzi Zhao, are you here to apply for this position too? The Zhuhai City shop was livelier than the half-city shop since the latter had already hired the employees. Yeah. Zhao Yulv cupped his hands and said, I excel in every game from Resident Evil, to Counter-Strike, to Devil May Cry, to getting treasures in The Legend of Mir 2. I even know all the combos in the King of Fighters and how to play fighting the landlord. He patted his chest in confidence and said, I just don't believe. Ach, Aunt, why are you pulling my ear? Before he could finish, he screamed again. What are you doing here? To apply for the position. Zhao Yulv waved his folding fan while pointing at the small blackboard. I am perfect for this position, right? Fang Hua said in surprise. Weren't you put on the blacklist by the owner? Zhao Yulv's face twitched. Who said that I can't become a shop clerk just because the shop doesn't serve me? Can't I serve myself? Su Tianji. Fang Hua. Awakens. His argument seemed indisputable. The problem was, the 3 of them looked at Zhao Yulv as if he were an idiot, wondering if he thought that Mr. Fang was a fool. Next. At this moment, Zhao Yulv heard Mr. Fang's yell. It's my turn. Zhao Yulv scrambled to stand before Mr. Fang. Mr. Fang. Zhao Yulv rubbed his hands with a fawning expression. What do you think of me? Mr. Fang's face turned dark. What do you mean? He leaned over and beckoned at the next person in line before glancing at Zhao Yulv. I didn't call you up as someone on my shop's blacklist. You want to become a shop clerk here? Next. Wait. Zhao Yulv yelled. Please give me a chance. Mr. Fang rolled his eyes. How can I give you a chance? After all, it's the system who made the rules instead of me. If Mr. Fang made them, he might be able to change the rules and help this young man. He asked the system while on the topic, is there any way that I can remove the customers from the blacklist? The system interface showed, host, you don't have this privilege yet. Please work hard to level up your privileges. Mr. Fang asked, when will I have enough privileges? The system interface displayed a text box. Please explore it by yourself. Mr. Fang looked embarrassed. Then, can I employ people on the blacklist as shop clerks? The system interface. The people on the blacklist don't get paid and can't be served. Mr. Fang scratched his head. But this job is serving others. The system was silent for a while before saying, okay. Mr. Fang's lips twitched, and he gave Zhao Yulv a long look. What specialties do you have? I've watched videos on the clearing of all stages for every game, and I know everything about games including the procedures, combos, and routines. Also, I did an in-depth analysis of the ingredients of all kinds of snacks. Hearing Zhao Yulv's long speech, Su Tianji was even stunned. Mr. Fang, can't you give this kid a chance? Mr. Fang patted Zhao Yulv on the shoulder and gave a long speech as well. The shop won't be responsible for your residence, snack, and pay. You can't play games when you work, must clean up the shop before you go, can't make any mistakes when taking in money, and can't be fooled when other people on the blacklist try to sneak in. Several minutes later, Mr. Fang finished speaking and took a drink of water. I still can't play games. Do you want the job or not? Ah! He yelled at the top of his lungs. Depending on my mood, I will decide when you will be removed from the blacklist, Mr. Fang added. I do. From now on, the despicable capitalist Mr. Fang found another target to exploit. On the side, Su Tianji looked pleased, and she said encouragingly, work hard. With tears on his face, Zhao Yulv said, okay. Fanghua, congratulations, junior brother Zhao. Thank you. Su Tianji comforted him. You're fortunate that you can observe and learn from the senior. He nodded with force. Right. Good. Go and prepare a bowl of instant noodles for me. Zhao Yulv. She was indeed his blood-related aunt. She didn't go easy on him and instantly asked him to do work for her. Since Jiang Ziyu would soon set off for the spiritual state, so the shop needed another clerk. Mr. Fang read the application forms of the candidates one by one. Zulong Wangjiang, Yuzhui, born in a home of scholars and can write poems and draw. Familiar with the plots of games including Resident Evil, Diablo, and The Legend of the Sword and Fairy. This name is familiar. Mr. Fang thought for a while and then slammed his hand on the desk. She is the owner of the bookstore that is selling my official Diablo novels. It seems that we have some good candidates with talent this time. Mr. Fang scratched his head and made the decision. It's overkill for her to manage a bookstore. It's better for her to work in the internet cafe. Now that we have enough employees, it's time to upgrade the shops. Origins Internet Club had altogether 2 shop fronts in Xuanhuan City with more than 1,000 computers in each shop. There was a total of 3,600 computers in Xuanhuan City. With this expansion, the computers were enough for not only customers of Dajin but the elite disciples from the nearby forces as well. The half-city shop was separated into 2 floors, and only spatial expansion technology was used. The space folding technology wasn't used this time. After entering the shops, people would think that they had entered another world. Both shops have a big area set aside for big guilds. The whole place was paved with wooden floors and had wide corridors. The posters of Dante, Li Xiao, and the liquor sword Immortal were placed on the walls in the game zone. In the movie and TV series zone, the posters had characters such as Zhuan Chunzong and Zhang Jiaofan on them. There were also some smaller zones for customers to experience robotic civilization and magic civilization. With the robotic-style corridors and walls that seemed to contain flowing flames, one could get different experiences in one shop. Of course, it didn't mean that the customers could only do one thing in a certain zone. However, when they had the choice, most of the customers would gather in the zone that fitted their tastes. The corridors were lined with pots of rare and exotic plants where their deep green leaves emitted faint fragrances, keeping the air inside fresh all the time. The lounge area was more spacious. After the computer time was up, the disciples and elders from different major factions and forces would gather here to talk about things like spiritual spells, combat techniques, game experiences, and how to kill bosses. By now, the new employees had come to their posts. The whole Origin Internet Club got a brand new look. Hello, everyone. I'm Yuzhui. She was a serene and graceful woman in plain clothes. Hello, everyone. I'm Zhao Yulv. As usual, Guangzi Zhao waved his folding fan, presenting a dashing figure before the customers. Tomorrow is the last day before the new year, the royal princess asked. Guangzi Zhao, what do you think of the cosplay event? What's your plan? Chapter 409, You're all talented. According to the rules of the cosplay competition, the winner wouldn't just be based on the votes. The characters who were harder to cosplay would receive extra points for the difficulty level. Mr. Fang had written down the details and the rules on the small blackboard. I've made a good plan for it. As for the specifics, Zhao Yulv waved his folding fan and said proudly, may I keep them secrets for now? Okay. It seems that you're confident in taking a high ranking in the competition. Guangzi Zhao, congratulations. Mu Dongulai cupped his hands. It has been a long time since I last saw you, and you have become an internet cafe manager. Would you like to play the King of Fighters with me today? I've been waiting to play one round with you. While his face twitched, Zhao Yulv said, this may be later. It's you, Ms. Yu. I heard that the Diablo 2 official novel was written by Ms. King and edited and published by you, right? The royal princess was obviously very interested in the first official novel. I read your work and was enthralled. I wonder if you guys have plans to publish an official novel for the other games? Yuzhui said, You have to bring this question to the boss." Beside them, Jiang Ziyu patted her forehead as if she had just remembered something. "Right. Official novels," she immediately said to Yu Shui. "Sister Yu, I want to buy several sets of the official novel." "Why, Ziyu, didn't I give you a hardcover set as a gift?" Yu Shui asked curiously. "The boss said that I would make many new friends in the Heavenly Academy, and he told me that we could give each other gifts to bond better." Jiang Ziyu popped out her chest and stood taller. "If I don't show them the book, how would they know what level of power that Lord of Terra Diablo has?" Mr. Fang stroked his chin and said, "I think that's what little kids do nowadays, right?" The New Year party was held on the second day after the two shops changed into their new looks. Despite its warmer climate, Xuanhuan City had the last snowfall of the year today. As a southern city, its snow wasn't as heavy as that in Half City. However, the flurry of snowflakes added to the holiday atmosphere in the shop. For most of the cultivators and warriors with high cultivation strength, they didn't celebrate the coming of a new year. Even for their birthdays, they only celebrated them once every 10 years. Oblivious to the passage of time, the cultivators usually spent all their time on hard cultivation despite the extreme weather. However, this new year was different from before. Outside the Xuanhuan City shop, a young man wearing brown uniform over a white t-shirt walked out of Lingyan Academy. There was the image of a burning sun printed on the back of the uniform. "Look, it's Kyokusanaji." The moment that he appeared, some disciples of Lingyan Academy instantly exclaimed. The passers-by were even more astonished. "My goodness, it's Iori Yagami." Walking beside Kyokusanaji with his hands in pockets, a red-haired young man saw the glances from the passers-by. Instead of being timid by the gazes, he laughed hysterically without caring. "Young Master Song, we're indeed more talented. We didn't get into top 3 in the Diablo individual competition, but we'll take all the top 3 places this time." Walking with Kyokusanaji and Iori Yagami was a young man wearing a golden broom-like hairstyle, black boots, a pair of jeans, and a black vest. Then, he punched out and copied Benimaru Nakado's tone while shouting, "Pumpkin punch!" The baffled passers-by who didn't know anything wondered, how come these people's hair colors are all over the place? "No idea. They look quite bad ss. Is it another trend of Lingyan Academy?" They remembered that the zombie outfit was once popular in the academy, and the students walked on the streets as a large group of zombies. Hey, young Master Lin, young Master Song, look over there." They saw a tall and thin demon with ram horns strolling on the street. "Mephisto?" Beside Mephisto was a woman with spiked red hair and sharp claws on her back. The passers-by all backed away from them. FCK Ontario. When they arrived at the door of Xuanhuan City shop, their eyes almost popped out. In front of the shop, Wesker and Jill were talking animatedly. Ling and the Bayou clan master laughed together. The Ghost King faction master and Xuanhuan Taoist were in a deep talk. Inside the shop, the scene was even more shocking. An alien from Grand Theft Auto 5 sat on the couch in the lounge area with a bowl of instant noodles. Beside it sat Michael in a formal suit. "Uang family master?" Song King Feng froze when he saw the Michael who was even fatter than the original robust character. Then, he looked back and saw another Mephisto walking in. He was followed by a ball. Shortly, another Mephisto walked in. The two Mephisto looked at each other and then each bought a bowl of instant noodles before sitting on the couch to enjoy the food. FCK. Song King Feng and the others were so stunned that their eyeballs almost popped out. A thick layer of snow had accumulated on the street outside the half-city shop. Frost even condensed on the shop's glass door. The shop wasn't open yet, and a group of people was waiting outside the door. The people standing at the outmost of the group wore black robes and called themselves disciples of the Ghost King faction. "Boss Black Demon, how come the shop is not open yet?" A scholarly-looking man who wore a pale green robe asked. "Lord Jin, should we shout and see if the owner is awake?" A cultivator wearing the black disciple robe of the Ghost King faction from Jade Dynasty walked over. The white-robed scholar's face twitched, and he said, "Call me Green Dragon." Black Demon said solemnly, "Call me Ghost King faction master." The moment he said it, a green figure landed from the sky while yelling in anger, "Where's the Ghost King faction master?" Pooh! Seeing the newcomer, Black Demon almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Immediately, he put a piece of black gauze around him. "There's no Ghost King. I'm Mr. Ghost." With long black hair fluttering in the wind and a green dress flapping in the snow, the newcomer looked like a lively green butterfly. Her charming face looked noble and cold. The others almost thought that Biao had resurrected. TL note: in Jade Dynasty, the Ghost King faction master is Biao's father. Ms. Ning. Ning Bai. Call me Ms. Biao. Ho ho. Ha. A white figure landed from the sky with a white cloak, white hair, and long eyebrows. The reincarnation king who had been sent flying by that big demon came back as the white brow spiritual master. Then, a wave of dazzling sword light came down from the sky. The water moon master, Lu Zuki, elder senior sister Wen Min, Wen Jianye, and the others all landed one by one. Duan Yu walked over. Zichi spiritual master, good to see you. I'm water moon master. Did you mistake me as someone else? Duan Yu. Meanwhile, wearing crude cotton clothes, Mr. Fang walked down with an erhu in his arms. He glanced around and saw 3 beauties at the counter, 2 big and 1 small. They were white-clothed nine-tailed demon fox Little White, lowly version of Zhao Linger, and Yuji who was wearing a gauze veil. Mr. Fang frowned. Where's the other shop clerk? How come he's late on his first day of work? Chapter 410, Blinded by the Sight. According to the rules for the cosplay competition, the participants couldn't transform their faces with an illusion spell. Of course, they were allowed to transform their bodies with the transfiguration spell. At this moment, a werewolf walked toward the counter. Meanwhile, 2 out of 3 girls at the counter turned and pointed at Yuji who was sitting between them and said, Guangzi Zhao said that he is ill today, and his little sister will do his work for him today. Oh, Mr. Fang waved his hand. Tell him to report to me next time. Then, Mr. Fang saw the werewolf walking toward the counter and muttered in a muffled voice, Old Zhao has a little sister. I've known him for a long time without hearing him mentioning it. Yuji's face beneath the veil turned dark. Mr. Fang, who had just turned to pour himself a cup of milk tea, paused his steps. The lowly version of Zhao Linger, who had been sipping coke, and the nine-tailed demon fox Little White looked at Yuji in alarm. Who is she? What? Kid Zhao has a little sister? An elegant and beautiful woman wearing a light and fluttering dress walked over with graceful steps. She had auspicious clouds surrounding her, and the thin gauze decorating her white dress fluttered even though there was no wind. She looked like a fairy walking out from a roll of painting. Ling Long? Everyone stared at her, recognizing that she was the woman who had suppressed the beast god more than 10,000 years ago in Jade Dynasty. Jiang Ziyu looked at the outfit on Ling Long before glancing down at her own cosplay and exclaimed, how come she brought her own special effects? Seeing that people were all staring at Ling Long, Yuji tried to take this opportunity to slip away. Stop! Ling Long, who had her own special effects, stared at Yuji and said with a snort, how come I don't know that kid Zhao has a little sister? Zhao Yulvzent, it wasn't possible that she didn't know he had a little sister. She instantly plucked off the veil from Yuji. Zhao Ulv. Mr. Fang instantly stared back at him. Hearing Mr. Fang's shout, all the people including Mephisto, Xuanhuan Taoist, and the Liquor Sword Immortal looked toward them. The atmosphere instantly froze in silence. Zhao Yulv finally let out a shrilling howl. Pooh! Jiang Ziyu spat out coke all over the counter. All the people were at a loss for words. Well done! Mr. Fang patted him on the shoulder and said meaningfully, when we grade the difficulty of cosplays, you'll get many extra points for sure. Zhao Yulv blushed and instantly took back his veil and put it back on. However, Mr. Fang leaned over and said, your familiarity with the female role reminds me of the incident where two Fangless. The people all stared at Zhao Yulv with a strange look on their faces. Hey hiya! 1,000 years ago, the Luyan Taoist Palace had a rare genius named the Thousand-Faced Godly Master who could change into any person he wanted. Few people knew his real look. Xuanhuan Taoist said with a laugh, today, we couldn't even recognize nephew Zhao even though he sat among us. It seems that he has inherited and mastered this transformation technique. Alliance Master Lan, you're right. The Ghost King faction master, who was dressed like a scholar, nodded in agreement. It's our fortune that we can see the thousand-face technique from 1,000 years ago. Ahem. Yuji finally raised his head. Right. Before he could finish his words, he felt a gust of cold wind sweeping toward him. Immediately, he sat back down and shrank his neck. Ahem. Thank you for your compliments, seniors. The people thought that this interlude was over when a yellow ball flew down from upstairs while screaming, "Och! How come your Zhuhai city is so cold as well? Will someone open the door to the room upstairs and get me a quilt?" 1 minute later, people gaped at the big smirking face emoji sitting on a couch. shivering inside a quilt. It glanced around and yelled, "Who told you that I can cosplay?" All the people in the area stared at it. "What are we seeing here?" They were almost blinded by this sight. Pooh! Even Mr. Fang spat out his drink. "Hey hiya! Aw, awesome! I have stitches on my sides. Ha hiya! Yori Yagami, Kyokusanaji, Ling Long," and the others laughed so hard that they couldn't straighten their backs. Jiang Ziyu was laughing so hard that she rested her upper body on the counter. "Zhao Yulv, bro, you're old but sensational." They all cosplayed people or monsters. None of them had thought about cosplaying an emoji. Meanwhile, a emoji sat on the couch and calmly sipped its milk tea, seeming oblivious to the others' admiring gazes and hiding its fame. The players came into the shop one by one. Today's events were divided into two parts. The King of Fighters competition was held during the day, while the New Year Music Festival and other entertainments would begin at 11 p.m. and continue into the early morning of the second day. Ever since Orochi Divine Light was shown on the live stream, the number of the King of Fighters players had grown tremendously. Now, most of the players bought the King of Fighters in Xuanhuan, and some rich ones even copied Mr. Fang and opened their own arcade shops. That was why the King of Fighters competition was such a popular and grand event. A special audience stand was prepared in Xuanhuan for the King of Fighters competition. Different from the Diablo 2 competition, the King of Fighters competition was using a platform system to sift through the players. In Xuanhuan, the competition ground was divided into several areas with platforms built. All the participants had 3 chances to fight, and the participants with the highest scores would enter the finals. Under the bright illumination of lights, the audience stand was full of customers from both shops. Obviously, many people wanted to take this chance to have some fun since they would have 2 more hours of computer time today. Now, let's welcome the participants. Ningbai, wearing her green long dress, had a microphone in her hand. Mr. Fang had invited her to host this event. Her fluttering green dress and sweet smile stunned many people. FCK BR, such a good cosplay. Meanwhile, some people sat in the lounge area and watched the event's live stream on the big screens while they waited for their turns to get online during the night. So Guangzi Modungalai had a thin layer of sweat on his face. "Ms. Yuji, what do you think of the situation? Who do you think will get good rankings in the King of Fighters competition?"